Hello and welcome to Route 664, the road to human kindness. I'm Les Winston, I'm your host, and I'm also the national spokesperson for socialsecharity.org, a project of the Endow America Network Foundation, and I'm here with one of my co-hosts.
It's quite a project from the Endow America Foundation.
Yes, it is quite a project. So what's interesting is after the last show, because I was so proud of the interview that we did with Stacy, that was really a fun interview. My mother-in-law, who lives in England, who's 96 years old. God bless her. Yeah.
Applaud her.
Yeah, no flies on that lady. She's with it, and she, obviously being so proud of the show, I sent it to her to view, and she's, at the end of the day, I figured I would get all sorts of kudos. She says, I really don't understand anything you're talking about. So she says, what is 664? I don't understand that, So
I love that question.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, in England, they don't use numbers to identify anything. They have like a national health plan. They don't call it Section 244 of the Parliamentary Code or whatever. Mm-hmm. But we do that in this country with 401k. So I said to her, we have certain things in this country that we identify by the number. It just happens to be that way, like the 401k and the 529, and real estate people know a 1031 exchange, and insurance people know a 1035 exchange. And those are numbers of the tax code. So it clarified a little bit of it. She says, but I still don't understand why it's Route 664. And what does that mean? And that's the key element of what we're doing. We want to identify Section 664 with the thought that you can create income for yourself, similar to Social Security, but it's called Social Security. And you can reduce your taxes by planning when you're having some sort of event happen, a financial event in your life where you're selling some property or selling stock or something like that, where you're trying to avoid taxes. There are ways to use these charitable Social Security devices to help you, so you can get income and you can reduce taxes. And at the end of use of that dollars by you, when you pass on, then it goes into the community. And that what goes into the community is the endowment part. Mm-hmm. And that's what I was connecting the dots for her. And she said, I get that. And I said, well, is there anything in your country that has something similar to that? And she said, I don't know, but I think all of the accountants know about it.
Of course.
And so accountants are very important in England. They do a lot of the planning for most of the people there. But I said, well, I think there's a difference. I think people in England look at accountants a little differently than we do in the United States. And they do rely very heavily on them in England for planning and things like that. But I said, this is something that they may know about or they may not know about. But in the United States, there aren't enough people using these Social Security devices to prove that it is well known, because that would be the proof. If there were millions of these devices being in existence, then it means that the people understand how to use these and they're using them for their benefit. I mean, Congress did this in 1969, and since 1969, there's such a small number of what these devices are, and that has to do with people not being aware of it. So Route 664 is a way to make you aware of it.
Yeah.
And
it's the road.
That's the road to human kindness.
Yes.
Now, why is it human kindness? Because philanthropy?
Well, we just love kindness, and it's about time people were kind, more kind.
Yes,
so, yeah.
to one another.
And I love philanthropy. It's using our dollars for better things.
Yeah, and also feeling good about what you're doing and having the sense of accomplishment from that perspective, that you can help other people. And it's not only by dollars. I do want to stress
Sure.
that it's also volunteering your time. It's being a leader in the community and doing things like that. And that also brings me to another thing, because one of the things she asked me was, are you still involved with the Chamber of Commerce? And I am. I'm president of the Aventura Sunny Isles Beach Chamber of Commerce. And in that capacity, I view the Chamber of Commerce and all chambers of commerce, I think that they're for the benefit of the community, and they're very long-standing and well-established organizations that have been around for a long time. I mean, the first chambers of commerce go back 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. And it was the idea that businesses in the community, the marketplace, the things like that, those are things that need to be ethically proper. They need to be, supported, and they need to have a voice in the community. And so the other question was, well, what is this all going to accomplish at the end of the day? And that's a really interesting comment, because what we want to accomplish is we want the communities to be better by using the money within the community left by people in the community for the use of the community. And that can result in safer schools, greater schools. It can
Safer community.
safer community. It also can be safer streets, greater streets. I mean, in my opinion, being in the Chamber of Commerce venue all of the time, I find it kind of disconcerting that chambers of commerce in some of these cities where they're having so much homelessness and so much interference with business as a result of the problems in the streets, I think that they should be taking a bigger role. And I don't hear them much. I don't hear the voice of the chambers. And I think that may be because in a lot of cases, the funding is a problem. They're relying on dues for membership. So what we're doing here locally is we want to utilize social security, that concept, and help build our community through our sponsorship as a chamber of this project, of the Social Charity Project and the Endow American Network Foundation. So one of the projects that we have been paying a lot of attention to is the Safe Schools, Great Schools project. And joining us now is the executive director of that project, John Capurso. Good morning, John.
Good morning. How are you, Les?
I'm great.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
see you.
It's
And
nice to
good
see
morning,
you.
Wanda.
Thank you for joining us, John.
So,
Well, I appreciate the opportunity for us to have this discussion.
yes, and I think that I want to just let the audience know that you're a very significant leader and steward in the philanthropic world, and you have been for a long time. And the project really appreciates that you've decided to work with it, and that's one of the key elements of our success. So, tell us, what is Safe Schools, Great Schools?
Well, Les, Safe Schools, Great Schools is a project of the Endow America Network Foundation, which is a nonprofit 501c3 organization. And this project was born out of the shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School in Parkland, Florida. And following that tragedy, it was apparent that many schools are not safe enough nor great enough. And not safe enough as seen multiple times with one shooting after another in this country. And not great enough witnessed by outdated ventilation systems, which have been exposed during the pandemic, and by teachers buying supplies and books for their students with their own money.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's a former teacher and a school principal now, and I can tell you she has done that many times.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be the way. So
What
we
is
want
so
to
what-
change all that with
Yeah,
our mission.
and is that the mission of Safe Schools, Great Schools, to be able to add funding? Is funding the issue?
Yeah, we want to change that, and with our mission to create, fund, and grow the endowments of public schools.
Okay, and the endowment is a word that many people may not be familiar with. Can you enlighten us a little bit of what an endowment is?
Well, an endowment is a collection of funds, if you will, of money that is used to whose interest gained by investing of that money
Mm-hmm.
is used to benefit the organization that holds that particular endowment. The corpus of that endowment, in most cases, established by policy by various boards of nonprofit organizations, is not used for the institution's purposes, but only the money that it gains. Therefore, the endowment always stays. And that's the value of an endowment, that it is going to always be there.
Mm-hmm. So you had a question about the
For me?
Yeah.
Well, can you explain how social security can help to make schools safer and greater?
Well, yeah, 50 years ago, the U.S. Congress created Section 664 of the Internal Revenue Code, which basically is Social Security.
Okay.
And it's reflected in the name of your show, Route 664, which comes from that section of the IRS code. And here's an example of how it works. An individual wanting to help his or her local public school can contribute, for instance, to a pooled income fund. This fund would allow the individual to reduce their tax burden, create more future annual income upon which they can rely, and most importantly, upon their passing, endow the public school of their choice with the corpus in their pooled income fund account.
Okay. So it helps the donor as well as the organization.
Absolutely. That is the covenant between the two. But with this benefit to individuals and schools alike, our public schools will acquire the level of funding that is necessary to make our schools safer and greater. And that's really what we're after.
Do you have any idea of the level of what you need to raise in the form of an endowment? In other words, how much financial support are you actually looking to gain from this? In other words, if you were to give the kind of numbers, I mean, if we wanted to produce $1 million worth of revenue, you would need at 3.3% on a very conservative level, you need about $30 million. Is that something that is that the level of ultimate funding that we're talking about? We're not talking about having bake sales. Is that correct?
No, we're not talking about one-shot event type things like that. And endowment funding is a long-term process. So you've got to look at the long goal. These endowments take time to build. Harvard University has a spectacular endowment, but it has taken them many, many, many years to build that endowment.
And what do they do with their endowment? Just a speculation as to get an idea of what they do. I mean, I don't know that are they using that to reduce tuition? Are they using that to support what do they use that for, since it's charitable funds?
Well, first of all, tuition never has, and probably never will cover the cost of education alone. So other funding is always needed. In some cases, schools, universities, tuition might accomplish in the neighborhood of 25% of the cost of actually operating that institution. Where does the rest of that come from? It comes from a variety of other sources, some of it government funding, and some of it private funding. And that private funding comes in a variety of ways. Endowment funding is just one of those.
So the suggestion is that social charity will build endowment, because generally speaking, when you're doing a social charity device, people are not putting small amounts of money into it in small stages necessarily. They're usually doing some sort of a transaction. Is that what your experience has been?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, that kind of funding usually does not come from cash. That comes from other assets that individuals hold. Could be real estate, it could be securities, it could be any number of other things that have value. And in many cases, larger contributions that are made from those sources and not from cash.
Why is endowment support needed by public schools?
Well, public schools just are not capable of keeping up with the funds that are actually available to them. They come from our tax dollars primarily, and we'd have to raise taxes significantly in order to really do what needs to be done, what we would like to see done in improving public schools.
So if we were looking forward, let's say because this is not something that can happen overnight, though funding can start, I mean, depending on, because a lot of it has to do with when the individual donor passes in a lot of instances. This is similar in some ways to a bequest that people make when they pass on, except that they do it while they're alive. And because they do it while they're alive, they get favorable tax treatment. So if we were looking out to 15 years from today, what's the ideal outcome? What would you, and I have a second, let me just back up for a second. Are we dealing with public schools, and are charter schools part of that picture? Are also, is there any restriction on funding other than public schools? I mean, private schools could be funded too, but
well, private schools,
Aren't they
in
funded?
many cases, are already funded like that.
right. So we already have the template, because people have to pay for the private schools, and that's how the money is used for those purposes.
Correct. And many of those people contribute in addition to the tuition that they supply to the school. Again, realizing that tuition does not cover the entire cost of operating an institution like that.
And charter schools are public schools. People may not realize that, but charter schools are public schools. So we're talking about supporting any public school.
Absolutely.
Okay. And who makes the determination as to which school gets supported?
It's not a question of who makes that determination of which school gets supported. It's a question of which schools would like to do this. This is available to any school. The schools just need to be aware that there are ways in which they can do this, and buy into that.
Okay. So again, going back to the picture of the future, what would be the ideal outcome of a successful work in this Great Schools, Safe Schools, Great Schools venue?
Well, our ideal outcome would be the financial security of each and every public school in America.
Wow.
Wow.
It is.
That's
It is, and it's long term and long sighted.
When I was in the opening, I was talking about the relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, or the Chamber of Commerce's, what I perceive the Chamber of Commerce's relationship with the community is, and the Chambers of Commerce would be an ideal way for some of this also to be dealt with regard to getting it known in the community, in the sense that people have to be familiar with it to be able to use it. How do you publicize something like this?
For the Chamber's involvement?
Chamber's involvement, or even to the schools. Would you go to the principals of the school? Do you need to go to the school board? Would the school board be a supporter of something like this? Do you have a?
It would make sense. It would make sense for the buy-in of the school board. Yeah.
Just saw Marta Perez walking around here. I should try and
Oh, really?
let me go snag her.
Marta Perez is a school board commissioner. Yeah.
Yes, I know Marta.
Okay. So, and now this is very personal here in Dade County. Safe Schools, Great Schools is working in Dade County to begin with, but is your objective to go statewide first and then go national, or how and what is the role of the professional philanthropic advisor in this?
Well, we're located in South Florida, and I think it would make sense for us to look at the state of Florida first, and then set up our successes there, and then use that as a springboard to go to other states.
Okay.
It's working. You're in Sunny Isles, correct?
Well, I think Sunny Isles, as far as one of the projects of the Aventura Sunny Isles Beach Chamber of Commerce, is we've been trying to get a high school in Sunny Isles Beach for quite a while, and part of that is we need to have some funding in order to be able to get the idea to the right number of people. It's a political issue, as far as I can tell. It also spaces you.
And we're going to run into that in other locations as well. There will be political considerations, I have no doubt.
Okay. Well, John, thank you for joining us this morning, and we obviously wish you great success with the project. And we will wait to get an update from you at some point in the near, not too distant future, and we'll see how things are going.
Look forward to that.
All right.
Yes, thank you very much, John.
And
John
thank you.
Capurso. John Capurso is the executive director of Safe Schools, Great Schools, a project of the Endow America Network Foundation, and socialcharity.org is another project, and so is Route 664.
Fantastic. Now, you guys have talked about safe schools and great schools, but in the safe aspect, you talked about helping with like the whole mental. I like that whole program with
yes,
just making it safer in their minds. Like, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, John and I discussed this before the show, and one of the things that came up in the safe schools idea, it's not just the barriers or the protective devices, it's also
physical,
the other issues which have to do with problem students,
right?
Which is what actually, from John's perspective, is what started to created Safe Schools, Great Schools because of the Parkland shooting, and that was as a result of a student from that school kind of falling in the cracks.
Right.
Nicholas Cruz had some issues that could have been dealt with earlier, and maybe this all could have been prevented. So one of the things that is necessary is to have a way to deal with the problem student, in that when that need arises, you need to have obviously a professional in the educational area, you need to have a professional in the psychological and medical area, and a professional in the legal area, so that you protect the rights of the individual, but also help that individual get back into a normal role in society. And so that triage, that does cost something to do that. And so part of the Endow process, part of what we want to do with the chamber and Social Charity, is to endow schools in the area so that they can be able to deal with that when the time arises, have the funds available to triage that individual back into the community.
I've heard kids say that they don't, or I've heard it said that there's maybe like one counselor for so many kids in public schools. And
yes,
I think if getting to them mentally, and helping them work through some of their issues.
Yes, and that's all has to do with funding.
Yeah.
I mean, everything really comes down to the funding. And, I think that the states have done a phenomenal job in what they are able to do. And I don't see any reason why the public or the community in which that school is located shouldn't be taking a greater role in helping to support that, especially if they can do it and benefit themselves. That's what's really an interesting part of this. It's not just to benefit the schools, but also you can benefit yourself. And you benefit yourself by creating the income, by paying taxes, and then eventually you benefit the schools. So I think everybody wins. It's a win-win situation.
Win.
Yeah, that's what we like. So we have some very special guests next week.
Next week, we will be talking to some of our chartered advisors in philanthropy. We'll hit and we'll have an advisor from the charity aspect and an advisor from client-based aspect.
Good.
I think we'll be talking to Randy Fox
Mm-hmm.
and Barry Nickelberg. I want to say he's from the Carter Center in Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the Carter Center is doing with social charity.
Yeah, that would be very that'd be very interesting. I'm looking forward to that interview as well. So how are we doing on time?
We've got 7 minutes. If you so choose to use it wisely.
We could use the dead air segment.
Oh, we could. I'm sure someone's passed on this past week. We've missed out on.
How you doing with dead air?
I haven't really approached dead air in the last month or so, but it's time we can revisit. Sure.
Okay. And then also we have some things coming up where we're going to be able to do more of disseminating the show on a different platform. We're still going to do the show on a weekly basis, and that'll be part of the other platform. It's going to be
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That
Yes.
was the kickoff date of that, May 1st?
May 1st,
Okay.
May Day,
Keep you
around
in
the maypole.
suspense about what that is. And but get to know Route 664. That's an important name. And I want to thank my mother-in-law for giving me the opportunity to do the monologue this morning, because Doris is a very special person and very wise.
Also remind you about the five wishes booklet too. Throw that in.
Yes, we haven't talked about that in a while, and that's something that you should take advantage of. It's not something to put off. You need to do that as soon as you can. Tommy, have you done yours?
I started on it.
All right, he started on it, ladies and gentlemen. So the 5 Wishes booklet is a way for you to create your own living will and your own surrogate health statement, and those are very important documents, because if something happens to you and you're unable to make decisions for yourself because you're injured, or you're in if you were in an accident or whatever, you don't want those decisions left to a stranger. You want somebody to be on your side, to be your surrogate health person. And you can give them instructions in the 5 Wishes booklet as to how they're going to deal with the situation. Under what circumstances should they do such and such? I don't want to use the term pull the plug, but this can be how bad it is. So that's a major decision. And so you want to be able to give direction to the person that you leave that responsibility to, and you can do that in the 5 Wishes booklet. And the 5 Wishes booklet is put out by Aging with Dignity, and you can find their link on our socialtocharity.org website, and by all means take advantage of that. They charge, I believe, $5 for the book, and it's well worth it. That document is equivalent to a lawyer's document. You don't need to have a lawyer to do it. You just need to have it signed and witnessed properly. It doesn't even need to be notarized. But every time you go to the hospital or to have any type of surgical procedure, they'll always ask you if you have a living will, and there's a reason why they do that, and that's because they want to know that there's some direction as to what you want to have happen, So again, 5 Wishes booklet.
Socialtocharity.org. Go there to find that.
Yep, and then go to Facebook also. Social Charity on Facebook. You'll find all of our shows, previous webcasts.
Links to all sorts of things.
Yeah, you'll be able to get a better education about 664, Social Charity, and
Charities.
How human kindness is affected by everything that we're talking about and doing today.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to Community Newspapers for the use of space. And Tommy, thank you for your production skills. And we'll see you again next week. Have a great week.
Ka-ching.